227,000 people didn't die in a single moment. They disappeared slowly as the land beneath them vanished, and by the time anyone understood what was happening, there was nowhere left to run. 8,000 years ago, there was a place that no longer exists. Not an island, not a coastline, but a vast landmass stretching between what we now call Britain and mainland Europe. A place we now call Doggerland. It was not empty, it was not untouched. It was a thriving world. Dense forests blanketed the land. Rivers carved through wide open plains. Wetlands stretched for miles, filled with birds, fish, and life. Red deer moved through the trees in herds. Wild cattle grazed across open grasslands. And along the riverbanks, people lived. They hunted with tools shaped by hand. They fished in shallow waters rich with life. They followed migration routes. They built communities. To them, this land was permanent. It had always been there, and it would always be there. But Doggerland had one fatal weakness. It sat low, too low, and the world around it was changing. The last ice age had ended. Massive glaciers that once covered much of the northern hemisphere were melting. At first, the change was slow, a shoreline shifting slightly inland, a familiar path disappearing beneath shallow water, a river widening just a little more each year. It didn't feel like disaster. It felt manageable, so people adapted. They moved their camps, they rebuilt further inland, they adjusted their routes and routines. The ocean crept forward, and they stepped back. Year after year, generation after generation. The land shrank, but life continued, until the pace began to change. What had once taken generations began happening within a lifetime. Lowlands turned into marsh. Marshes turned into open water. Entire sections of land disappeared beneath the rising sea. The retreat became constant, relentless, but even then, the rising ocean wasn't the true threat. The real danger was building silently far to the north. Beneath the cold waters off the coast of Norway, the seafloor was under pressure. Layer upon layer of sediment had accumulated over thousands of years. Heavy, unstable, barely holding together. Small shifts had happened before, minor collapses, nothing catastrophic. But this time, it was different. The pressure had reached a breaking point. And then, without warning, it failed. What followed is now known as the Storegga Slide, one of the largest underwater landslides ever recorded in Earth's history. Over 3,000 cubic kilometers of sediment collapsed almost instantly. An enormous section of the continental shelf broke free and plunged downward into the ocean. The force of it was unimaginable. Trillions of tons of earth and rock dropped into deep water, displacing the ocean above it. And when that much water is forced to move, it doesn't stay contained. It rises, and then it spreads. The ocean surged upward, and then outward in every direction. Toward Norway, toward the North Atlantic, toward the coastlines of Scotland, and directly toward Doggerland. There was no warning, no sound, no visible signal, just a normal day, on land that had already begun to feel uncertain. And then, something changed. The ocean began to withdraw. At first, it was subtle. The waterline shifted slightly outward, exposing rocks that were usually hidden. Then it continued. The shoreline pulled back further and further, until bays emptied, inlets drained, rivers flowed toward nothing, and then the ocean was gone. Miles of exposed seabed stretched into the distance. Fish flopped helplessly in the open air. Shellfish lay scattered across wet sand. Boats rested on ground that had never been seen before. For the people who witnessed it, it must have felt impossible. The sea had vanished. Some may have walked out onto the exposed land, drawn by curiosity, trying to understand what they were seeing. Others may have stood frozen, watching the horizon, because something about it felt wrong, deeply wrong. And then they saw it. At first, it was just a line, a dark shape stretching across the horizon. But it didn't stay flat. It began to rise. Slowly at first, then faster, climbing higher and higher until it became something else entirely. This wasn't a wave, it was a wall. A massive moving wall of water, stretching across the entire horizon. And it was coming fast. Too fast. There was no time to react. No time to gather anything. No time to reach safety. Because there was no safety. The wave didn't crash like a normal tide. It slammed into the land. A violent surge of water that tore through everything in its path and didn't slow down. In some areas, it may have reached heights of over 20 meters. In others, even higher depending on the terrain. But the true danger wasn't the height, it was the force behind it. The speed, the mass, the unstoppable momentum. Forests were torn apart in seconds. Trees ripped from the ground and carried away like debris. Rivers reversed direction instantly. Water surged inland with overwhelming power. The ground itself was stripped away. Soil, stone, everything. Entire landscapes disappeared in minutes. Anything in the path of that water was taken. People, animals, shelter, gone. There was no escape, no high ground high enough, no distance far enough. Just water and force and chaos. And then it pulled back, dragging everything with it. The land that had just been flooded was torn apart as the water retreated. Anything not already destroyed was pulled out into the open sea, and still, it wasn't over, because the first wave was only the beginning. More surges followed, each one crashing inland with devastating force, each one reshaping what little remained, each one pushing the boundary between land and ocean further and further inland. And when it was finally over, Doggerland was no longer whole. Massive sections had been permanently submerged. What remained was fragmented, broken, unstable. The land that once connected entire regions was collapsing into the sea, and the ocean wasn't done yet. In the years that followed, sea levels continued to rise. Slowly, relentlessly. What the tsunami had started, the ocean finished, piece by piece. Doggerland disappeared beneath the North Sea, until there was nothing left above the surface at all. Today, it's gone, buried beneath layers of sediment, hidden under cold, dark water. But we know it was there, because we've found the evidence. Ancient tools shaped by human hands, bones of animals that once roamed open land, remains of forests preserved beneath the ocean floor, proof that this wasn't just a theory. It was real, a real place where people lived, adapted, survived, until they couldn't. Because sometimes, survival isn't about strength, it isn't about intelligence, and it isn't about preparation. Sometimes, it comes down to something much simpler, whether the ground beneath your feet is still there tomorrow. And for Doggerland, it wasn't. No survivors. Not because every life ended in a single moment, but because the world they lived in was erased. And when the land is gone, there's nowhere left to return to.